So a simple gut reset might sound too small to actually fix anything. And I get why. It's not surgery, it's not a supplement stack, it's not some 30-day cleanse you have to buy online. It's just 3 small habits stacked together: a longer overnight fast, 1 fiber-rich meal, and a spoonful of fermented food. And I get why that sounds almost too easy to matter. But there's a reason this exact combination keeps showing up in the research as one of the fastest ways we know of to repair the lining of your gut and reset the trillions of bacteria living inside. And the best part is how little it asks of you. It doesn't cost much. You don't need a juice cleanse or a colonic or some exotic root powder shipped from overseas. You can do it in your own kitchen with food you probably already have, and it only takes about 10 extra minutes out of your entire day. Yet what those 10 minutes set off inside your gut reaches a lot further than just digestion. It will affect your inflammation and your immune system, your skin, your blood sugar, your sleep, and even your mood. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 9 specific changes that happen inside your body when you actually repair your gut the right way. Some of these effects kick in within hours of starting. Others build slowly over weeks and months until one day you realize the bloating, the fatigue, the brain fog you thought was just normal has quietly disappeared. And at the end of the video, I'll show you a simple test you can do on your own bathroom floor. Well, not literally the floor, but you'll see what I mean. A test that researchers have actually linked to how healthy your gut really is. And we'll go over what a good result looks like. If you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Amelia Stone, and my mission is to give you the science and the practical tools to not only live longer, but to feel better. And as always, even though I'm a physician, I'm not your physician. So please talk to your doctor before making any changes to your health regimen, as all the information in this video is educational only and not medical advice. The first change you'll see when you start repairing your gut properly is in the lining itself. Your gut isn't just a tube that food passes through. It's lined with a single layer of cells, just one cell thick in some places, and that layer is basically the border control between the outside world and your bloodstream. It's supposed to let nutrients through and keep out toxins, undigested food particles, and bacteria that don't belong in your blood. But when that lining gets damaged, from stress, from processed food, from certain medications, from a lack of fiber, the gaps between those cells widen. And this is what people mean when they talk about a leaky gut. Stuff starts slipping through that shouldn't. And your immune system, sitting right on the other side of that thin wall, notices immediately. So when you give your gut a break with a longer overnight fast, something interesting happens. Your gut activates a cleanup process called the migrating motor complex. Think of it like a housekeeping crew that only comes out when the kitchen is empty. It sweeps through your intestines, clearing out leftover food particles and bacteria that have wandered somewhere they shouldn't be. And this crew basically never shows up if you're constantly snacking, because every time you eat, even a small bite, that whole cleanup cycle gets interrupted and has to start over. So stretching your overnight fast to around 12 to 14 hours, which honestly most of us can do just by not snacking after dinner, gives that housekeeping crew the uninterrupted time it needs to actually finish the job. Now the second change happens in the bacteria living inside you, and this one is honestly the star of the whole show. You have somewhere around 38 trillion bacterial cells in your gut, which is roughly the same as the number of human cells in your entire body. And these bacteria aren't just passengers. They produce vitamins, they train your immune system, and they break down fiber into compounds your own cells can't make on their own. When you eat fiber-rich food, especially the kind found in vegetables, beans, oats, and fruit, your gut bacteria ferment it and produce something called short-chain fatty acids. And one of those, called butyrate, is basically premium fuel for the cells lining your colon. Those cells actually prefer butyrate over sugar as their main energy source. So when you feed your bacteria well, they feed your gut lining directly. And this is the loop that so many people miss. It's not just about killing off bad bacteria. It's about actively feeding the good ones so they can do their job. Fermented foods add another layer here. Something like plain yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, or kimchi introduces live bacterial strains straight into your gut, and even though most of them don't set up permanent residence, research shows they pass through and interact with your existing microbial community, nudging the whole ecosystem toward more diversity. And more diversity in your gut bacteria is consistently linked to better metabolic health and lower inflammation. The third change shows up in your immune system, and this might surprise you because we don't usually think of digestion as an immune function. But somewhere around 70% of your entire immune system lives in tissue lining your gut. It makes sense when you think about it. Your gut is the biggest surface area in your body that's in direct contact with the outside world, through the food you eat. So your immune cells are basically stationed there, constantly sampling what comes through and deciding what's safe and what's a threat. When your gut lining is healthy and your bacteria are diverse, this immune tissue functions calmly. It responds to real threats and ignores harmless things like food proteins. But when the lining is damaged and bacteria are out of balance, a state researchers call dysbiosis, this immune tissue starts firing more aggressively at things it shouldn't. And that low-level chronic activation is part of why gut problems get linked to things that seem totally unrelated: skin issues, joint pain, even mood problems. Repairing the gut essentially calms this immune tissue back down, and you can feel that as fewer random flare-ups and less overall inflammation. Now the fourth change is one you can actually feel within days, and it's in your blood sugar. Your gut lining and your gut bacteria both play a role in how fast sugar from your food hits your bloodstream. When the gut lining is inflamed and leaky, and when your bacterial diversity is low, blood sugar tends to spike higher and crash harder after meals. But short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, the ones your bacteria make from fiber, actually slow down how fast your stomach empties into your small intestine, which smooths out that sugar spike. And fermented foods, interestingly, seem to improve something called insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells respond better to the insulin your body releases. So you need less of it to do the same job. So that heavy, foggy feeling after a big meal or the 2 o'clock energy crash, a lot of that traces back to what's happening in your gut, not just what's on your plate. The fifth change is in your skin, and this one surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. There's actually a term for this now: the gut-skin axis. When your gut lining is leaky and inflammation is elevated, some of those inflammatory signals travel through your bloodstream and show up as skin issues, breakouts, redness, eczema flare-ups. Researchers have found that people with conditions like acne and rosacea often have measurable differences in their gut bacteria compared to people with clear skin. And when gut health improves in several small trials, skin symptoms improved right alongside it, without changing a single skincare product. So if you've tried every serum and cream out there and nothing's really moving the needle, it might be worth looking at what's actually happening lower down in your gut. Because your skin is often just reporting on inflammation that started somewhere else. The sixth change reaches your brain, and this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Your gut and your brain are in constant two-way communication through something called the vagus nerve, which is basically a long cable running from your brainstem down to your gut. And your gut bacteria actually produce neurotransmitters, the same chemical messengers your brain uses. In fact, somewhere around 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter tied to mood and well-being, is produced in your gut, not your brain. So when your gut bacteria are out of balance, that production line gets disrupted, and some researchers believe this is part of why gut issues so often show up alongside anxiety and low mood. And it goes both ways too. Stress signals from your brain can also disrupt your gut, which is why some people feel their stomach drop or churn the moment they're nervous. Repairing the gut, feeding it well, giving it rest, tends to calm this whole communication line down in both directions. People who work on their gut health often report feeling calmer and clearer within just a couple of weeks, and this axis is very likely part of why. Now the seventh change is in how well you actually absorb nutrients from your food, which is easy to overlook. A damaged, inflamed gut lining doesn't just let bad things through more easily, it also gets worse at pulling good things in. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, all of these need a healthy, intact gut lining with fully functioning absorption sites to actually make it into your bloodstream. So you could be eating a technically perfect diet and still come up short on things like iron, B12, or magnesium if your gut lining is compromised. This is part of why some people feel persistently tired or run down even though their diet looks fine on paper. As the lining repairs itself, usually within a matter of weeks once you remove what's damaging it and add in what supports it, absorption efficiency climbs back up. And a lot of people notice their energy levels improve for that exact reason, not because they changed what they were eating, but because they finally started absorbing it properly. The eighth change is in your sleep, and the connection here runs through your gut bacteria again. Certain strains of gut bacteria are involved in regulating the production of melatonin and other compounds tied to your sleep-wake cycle. There's also a feedback loop with cortisol, your main stress hormone, which your gut bacteria help modulate. When gut inflammation is high, cortisol patterns tend to get disrupted, which can mean trouble falling asleep, or waking up in the middle of the night for no obvious reason. Several studies have found that people who eat more fermented and fiber-rich foods report better sleep quality. And researchers suspect the gut microbiome is at least part of the mechanism behind that link. So if you've been staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning wondering why, it might be less about your mattress and more about what's happening several feet lower in your digestive tract. Now the ninth and final change is the one that reaches your entire body at once, and it's chronic low-grade inflammation. This is the same slow simmering inflammation that sits quietly underneath heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even some forms of cognitive decline. And here's the thing, your gut is one of the biggest sources of this kind of inflammation when it's not working properly. A leaky gut lining lets bacterial fragments called endotoxins slip into your bloodstream, and your immune system reacts to these constantly, keeping your whole body in a low-level state of alert. Even when you're not sick. Researchers actually have a name for this specific pattern. They call it metabolic endotoxemia. And it's been linked to weight gain, insulin resistance, and elevated markers of inflammation across the board. When you repair your gut lining and support a diverse bacterial population, you shut off a huge source of this background inflammation. And the effects of that ripple out into basically every system we've already talked about: your skin, your brain, your blood sugar, your immune system, all of it. So let's talk about the test I mentioned earlier, the one you can actually do yourself to get a rough read on your gut health. It's not a lab test and it's not perfect, but it's backed by a surprising amount of research, and it's called the Bristol stool chart, alongside something called a transit time test. Here's how it works. The Bristol stool chart ranges from type 1, small hard separate lumps, which usually means things are moving too slowly through your gut, all the way to type 7, which is entirely liquid, meaning things are moving too fast, often from inflammation or irritation. The sweet spot, the one associated with the healthiest, most diverse gut bacteria in study after study, is type 3 and type 4, smooth, soft, sausage-shaped, and easy to pass without straining. If you're consistently landing outside that range, it's often a sign your fiber intake, your hydration, or your bacterial balance needs some attention. Now pair that with the transit time test, which is even simpler. Eat a couple tablespoons of whole corn kernels or a serving of beets and just note the time. Beets will tint your stool a reddish color, corn will show up more or less undigested, so you can literally track when it comes back out the other end. A healthy transit time generally falls somewhere between 12 and 48 hours. If it's taking much longer than that, things are moving too slowly. Waste and toxins are sitting in contact with your gut lining for too long. If it's coming out in just a few hours, things might be moving too fast for proper nutrient absorption and bacterial fermentation to happen. Neither extreme is where you want to live long term. And again, this isn't a diagnostic tool. It's not going to replace an actual conversation with your doctor if something feels seriously off, but it's a genuinely useful, completely free way to get a rough sense of where your gut stands right now, and to track whether the changes you're making are actually moving things in the right direction. So if you want to start putting all of this into practice, here's the simple version. Stretch your overnight fast to somewhere around 12 to 14 hours, which for most people just means finishing dinner a bit earlier and not snacking right before bed. Add one genuinely fiber-rich meal into your day. Think vegetables, legumes, oats, whole fruit, the kind of fiber your bacteria can actually ferment. And bring in a small serving of a fermented food, plain yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, whatever you actually enjoy eating regularly. Because the food you'll stick with beats the perfect food you'll abandon in a week. None of this requires a cleanse, a powder, or a subscription. It requires showing up with these 3 small habits consistently, because just like we've seen with so many things in the body, it's rarely one dramatic overhaul that fixes things. It's the quiet, repeated signal, sent day after day, until your gut has no choice but to adapt and repair itself. And once again, if you have any ongoing digestive symptoms, unexplained weight changes, or blood in your stool, please don't just try to fix this on your own. Go see your doctor and get it properly checked out, because some of these symptoms can point to things that need real medical attention, not just a dietary tweak. I hope this was helpful. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.